I'll call the meeting to order for the May 20th CAC regular meeting. Will the Vice Chair please call roll?
You're muted, Randy.
Sorry about that. I had the roster open and then I lost it. So if you could give me a moment. My apologies.
Oh, that's all right.
Just remember, the air is human. To really foul up requires a computer.
I didn't quite catch that.
I said the air is human. To really foul up requires a computer.
Ah, that is true, as I'm demonstrating right now. Okay, all right, I'm good. All right, let's see. John Arnold? Brian Conway?
Present.
Rondi Cox? Present. Lily Kleinlein? Lauren Cott? Andrew Manley?
Present.
Nelson Schaefer?
Present.
Paul White?
Here.
Morning Wilder? Joe, and I'm sorry, is it Winia or Winia?
Yeah, long story, but Winia generally, yes.
Okay, that's what I've been saying, but then I thought, okay, sorry. Joe Winia, you're obviously here.
Present, thank you.
We have quorum, thank you.
You do, excellent, thank you. All right, so the proposed agenda was distributed on the 15th by email. I'm sorry, on Monday the 17th. Are there, I'm sorry, is there any opposition to the agenda as distributed? All right, seeing none, the agenda is adopted. Give me just a moment. I also, like Roundy, lost my document. There we go. All right, so if we can go ahead and get started with the first order of business, it is the approval of meeting minutes from the April 15th regular CAC meeting, which was made available via Dropbox and via email on the 18th. And are there any corrections to the agenda as it was distributed? All right, seeing none, the minutes are approved as distributed. And that will bring us on to our next order of business, which is reports, starting with the district, if you would, Tom.
Well, I guess with the health department rescinding their COVID health order, health directive, that we've had to make some changes to the way the recycling centers operate. So although we still encourage masks and distancing, we no longer require them. Without that health order in place, we don't really have the basis, the justification to require them. And then we also have reopened all of the trading posts, sidewalk at South Walnut. So all our reuse programs are back up and running as of Monday. And administration building is now open again as well. So again, still, and we're still getting some signage in place and stuff, but still encouraging masks and social distancing for people that use our facilities to protect themselves, our staff, and other customers, but no longer going to be requiring or enforcing those. And then seeing Ryan here reminds me that we did, I don't know if any of you will recall, a year ago, we did pursue a grant through ITEM, through their community recycling grant that was to help us expand and promote the expansion of the food waste collection to all the recycling centers, which did happen last fall. That grant term ended on Friday, last Friday, the 14th or the 15th. And so there's at the end of that, there's reporting requirements to submit, just, to talk about whether or not you achieved your goals, to get reimbursement of the grant funds that were part of the agreement. We got all that submitted today. Everything looks good, and we anticipate, getting the full grant amount that we were expecting to get. So, and other than that, our board did adopt the electronic attendance policy, similar to what's in your packet at their board meeting last week. I've also since reviewed the resolution in your packet, and when we get to that point, I have some tweaks that we need to make to that, things I forgot to change when I put it together and sent it to Joe. So we'll cover that, and yeah, I guess the rest of it we'll get to when we get to that resolution. So that's all that I have.
Thank you, Tom. Are there any questions on that report? All right, not seeing any, I'll go ahead and proceed to the chair report, which is not very much for this particular meeting. Did want to say a special thanks to Ryan, Rondi, and Paul for the Adopt a Road cleanup, which took place, it's a while ago now, but it was just a couple of days after our last meeting. So that was successful, and I thank you to Nelson for making the effort to try to connect. Also, I wanted to mention that the Board of Directors joint meeting was held on April 29, so just a couple weeks after that. And I also wanted to say thanks to our Executive Director, Donna Glasson, and County Council Member Munson, Commissioner Githens, Council Member Piedmont Smith, and Mayor Hamilton for their contributions and attendance. It was pretty productive and good to have everybody on board and weighing in. I also wanted to mention that I wanted to spend some time in this meeting following up on the mid-update email that I had sent out just last week, which had a few different items in it, most of which were incorporated into the agenda already. But if there were any additional questions to that, we can take those up afterwards. And that there wasn't an awful lot to report back to the CAC from this past month's board meeting. So if you have any specific questions, we can talk about that, but that is all I have for the chair report. Are there any questions? Great. So we do not have, or we have not had any special committee meetings since our last general or regular meeting. We also don't have any special orders for this meeting, so we can go ahead and proceed to unfinished business, which I had added from discussions we were having at the end of our previous meeting that I had put into a Dropbox shared document, but I saw that there was no content added to the file, so I wanted to bring it up again here to make sure that there were a couple of items that I thought still had pending discussion for them that we didn't really conclude. Did anyone get the chance to take a look at that document in Dropbox? And if not, I can pull it up. I'll pull it up right now for a screen share. If you can bear with me for just a moment.
Do you need to share your screen, Joe?
I do. It should be, yes, it is possible.
You have that? Okay.
Yep. It is enabled. I was just making sure that I had the working document open so I could jump to the points where there were still some questions to discuss. Is it visible to everyone attending?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this was about to pick up where we were discussing at the end of our previous meeting. This is about some of the planned contents that weren't covered by the committee meetings that we had. And among those were, let's see, designated supervision, and deciding the surveillance and enforcement procedures, and then just one follow-up item on the disposal of certain waste materials. And in terms of, I think the one that was outstanding in terms of what I had taken down from the end of our last meeting was the enforcement, that we hadn't really concluded how the enforcement would be managed. So I wanted to revisit that topic to see what members have to discuss.
Are you talking about within the statute where it talks about enforcement of the district moving forward with the plan, following the plan?
Yeah, so it's IC 1321
All right,
513.
Just for me, drawing a distinction between that and enforcing illegal dump issues and solid waste violations.
I see, yes. Yeah, important to distinguish. So yeah, it was section 6 as shown right here on the screen share. Which is, I'll read it out for those who are not on a video call. Describe the surveillance and enforcement procedures to be implemented to ensure compliance with the district plan. So basically ensuring district compliance with the plan.
Well, I guess probably as good a point as any for me to, I think, and Joe, you and Ryan were at the board meeting and heard me say this, but I don't know what other members have watched that or, but I mean, I'm starting to put together a draft plan that I want to get. I want to have at least a good enough version to distribute by the end of the month so the executive committee can see that, to put it on the board agenda. And maybe, when I get that and people see that, maybe that will spur discussion or ideas for people to suggest, tweaks, revisions to whatever I throw in there. It's certainly what I'm not envisioning a final document that I'm working on now, just trying to put some semblance of a plan together so we have a working document for the board and the CAC to work off of to develop that final document.
All right. I'll make a quick note of that here for my records. Okay, if there are no further remarks on that subject, I think we can proceed to the next then, which is follow the comments that I had made in the document here. Following up on the management of waste tires as one of the plan required specification or plans specified required waste materials. Is this something that we should follow up on within the CAC for plan purposes?
Is that a question to me?
To the committee in general.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I understand your question.
So in section, it's probably harder since you can't see it. In the Indiana Code, section 14, it says that a district plan must also include provisions for the management and disposal of the following materials for the term of the plan. And then it lists 5 different materials: waste tires, household hazardous waste, used oil, white goods, and other classifications of waste provided for in the state plan. So we had talked about how the district already covers a number of those things. And then the one that was still open was waste tires that the district itself doesn't have any coverage for, but we were talking about how to handle that fact within the scope of the management plan. So I wanted to bring that item up to see what the committee thought on how to approach that.
Well, at the moment, what I know is that it's waste tires are being ordered.
Paul, if you were, I don't know, maybe you don't have this problem, but I'm not able to hear your audio.
You say you cannot hear me?
There it is. Okay, it is back.
All right. I said, as I understand it, right now, waste tires were cutting into quarters and disposing them of either dump or sometimes they go to somebody who grinds them up to use the rubber for playground equipment floors and that kind of stuff. I haven't heard of any other types of disposition of those.
Well, look, I mean, those are two of the options, for waste tires. The issue locally, I think, is who's collecting them and getting them to the people that do that, and that seems to be the problem that residents are running into. If you go to the tire shop and buy tires, they take your 4 old ones and they deal with them. But if you've done that work on your own or for some other reason have waste tires, it's hard to find somebody that'll take those off your hands if you're not buying tires from them. I think that's from my perspective, the calls that we get, that's the issue, the problem that the residents seem to be encountering.
Okay.
And I mean, and I'll says, it says in there, yeah, staff is looking at, I mean, this is a problem, we've identified it, and what can we do about it? Excuse me. And we get through the plan. I intend for this to be something that staff pursues. I'm gonna have to get some legal guidance on, I think we've referenced on a number of different topics and different times, the clause in the statute about, the steps the district has to go through if it's going to compete with the private sector. And if, what do we have to do to make sure if we're doing a fee for service program that we've complied with that statute. And then based on the calls that we get, I don't know that I anticipate anybody locally raising a stink about us offering to collect waste tires, but we still have to go through that process to show that we've satisfied the statute. And assuming that all goes through, I mean, staff is aware of the registered waste tire haulers in the state that service this area that have the capacities to manage the number of tires that we would anticipate having to ship at any given time.
So are you thinking, Tom, that maybe we might foresee having a collection site for waste tires that the retailers aren't taking care of?
Yes. Yeah. In all likelihood, that would be at the South Walnut facility where we're set up to transact money, because waste tires, unfortunately, can be a costly venture, and it's not something we can just absorb into the budget.
Yeah.
So there would have to be some fees for that.
Yeah, I think the tire handling fee now at retailers is $1.50 a tire, something like that.
Well, from the pricing structures I know from the tire haulers, that seems to be in line with what you would expect to pay. The issue is, if you're not buying tires from them, will they take them? And what I'm gathering from calls that we get is that most of them are not. So.
All right, any other additional thoughts from CAC members on pursuing this with respect to the management plan?
I think maybe just noting that it's being talked about, or it's being considered to look into legality of the district having a competition with the private sector in this case to facilitate waste tire management in the county in the pitfall areas. But then just note the companies that are transporting, storing, and processing them, and then maybe a clause in there stating certain private retailers, you can take them to there for a fee. That would seem to satisfy it.
All right.
Well, I would think that if our fee was the same as a private retailer's fee, it's quite honestly, they're not making money on it. It's an inconvenience fee.
Right, but the way that the statute is written, there's still steps the district has to go through to show that it is pricing competitively with with existing service providers.
All right.
All right.
The concern being that, as a tax funded entity, we could use that tax revenue and go low on pricing and undercut the private sector. That's the gist of the concern that the statute tries to address.
Got it.
Okay. So, yeah.
Okay. So if there aren't further remarks on that topic, I basically had a similar note for the management of white goods. So as we had concluded or established in our last meeting, the district currently accepts them as scrap metal. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes.
Okay. And then there was note that other repair or resale services could exist for receiving them. Is that something that we want to approach in our management plan recommendations?
I mean, from my perspective, there's repair, reuse, resale. Those are always better options than recycling, wasting. I think for whether it's white goods, furniture, whatever, you always want to keep an eye out for those options, and organizations you can partner with to keep stuff in circulation and in use.
Definitely agreed. Any other thoughts from members?
Would it be something we could possibly list on the website, other places where the people could take white goods that are still functioning, like I don't know, if Restore accepts that kind of stuff, because that's something we could list on the website if we looked into what is available in town?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we do that for mulching and composting facilities. We could certainly start to look at putting a similar list of contacts together for reuse and repair of items. I get the composting facilities were easy because they all have to register with the state. Where I get leery in doing that stuff is you miss somebody and they take offense to that, whether it was intentional or not.
I wonder if that's something that could be considered in the new website design, kind of like a flow chart for, if I have this, where would I start? If I want to try to pass it off for reuse before I take it for recycling. But then there could always be a note, I would think, on that page that lists places where you can take stuff. You could say, do you accept these items too? Let us know and we'll add you, or whatever would be appropriate.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's always ways to try to capture those people that get missed or left off the list for whatever reason.
Yeah. But I do think, considering that for the website redesign, not that part of it, but just like, I have this, what can I do with it? I don't know. That could be an interesting opportunity.
Yeah, that's something that other management districts have, and to which I have contributed in other places. And I think that that's a great resource if we're trying to, focus on diversion and or, fixing it or whatever. So I agree that would be a good addition to the site.
Certainly can look at that. Yeah, and Morning, if you have, I mean, experience with other districts or other organizations with similar lists, if you could email me some links to some examples and stuff, that'd be great.
Sure. Yep. I can do that.
All right, and with respect to the management plan for the addressing it as a required waste material. Are there any thoughts on how that should be addressed within the recommendations?
Well, I think for the purposes of satisfying what the statute requires of the plan, accepting them as scrap metal suffices.
Okay.
That gets them out of the waste stream and gets them recycled, in essence. But that's not to say that we can't have an objective or a goal, to try to divert as much of that from scrap as we can by repair and reuse. But I think accepting them and getting the metal recycled, that kind of satisfies the requirement of the statute.
All right, that helps. Thank you, Tom. I'll make a note of that. All right, and that was the last item I had listed as open from our previous meeting's discussion. So I will end that screen share. So we can return to the tile view, and that brings us to the next order of business, which would be new business. The first item of which to take up is Resolution 2021-1 on electronic attendance. Are there any motions regarding this resolution?
You want me to go through the corrections that need to be made now, or do you want to have the motion and then address the corrections?
I suppose from a practical standpoint, I guess it's going to have to happen either way. So since you proposed, I think we can go ahead and start with that.
With the corrections?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, and I apologize. I mean, this is a result of me taking the resolution the board adopted and trying to modify it for the CAC, and there's just some areas where I did not make the necessary changes to identify the CAC. So, is in the last whereas, it says the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District. That should just be the CAC. And then now therefore be it resolved by the board of directors, that should be by the Citizens Advisory Committee of the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District. And then under number 1, where it says the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District, you should add to that the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District Citizens Advisory Committee wishes to adopt. And I think that was it.
Okay. Is there a modified version of that file as I have it in PDF form?
There is not, but I can certainly. I mean, if the CAC approves those changes and does adopt the resolution, I can get one out to everybody, or Joe, I can get it to you tomorrow morning so that you can work with the rest of the members to figure out signatures and whatnot. But for the way things are right now, just having the recorded record of this meeting and the minutes of this meeting, if it takes us a while to get signatures, if you do pass the resolution, the policy is officially adopted. We have a record of that, irregardless of when we get the document signed by all the necessary parties.
Okay, good to know.
Well, if that's the case, can I go ahead and motion to adopt the resolution or to vote on the resolution?
Yes, I would encourage that, adding the specification that it has the amendments previously mentioned by Tom.
Okay, well then, for the record, I motion to vote on the resolution with the amendments that were outlined by Tom.
Second,
Okay, so when you make a motion, generally you're moving to approve. You want the vote to go one way or another.
Right,
All right,
to
then
adopt the resolution.
And I motion to adopt the resolution with Tom's amendments.
You
second,
move to adopt.
Oh my gosh. I move to adopt. Sorry.
Correct. Okay, there is a motion and second to adopt the resolution 2021-01 with the amendments to specify the CAC were not previously called out. Is there any discussion?
I guess I would just, based on some of the questions that were asked at our board meeting, I want to make sure that the membership is aware of what this policy means for you as members of the CAC in conducting your meetings, moving forward. And this is all in the attachment A. But adopting this policy does allow for the electronic attendance and participation at meetings with the restrictions, the caveats that a member cannot participate electronically in 2 consecutive meetings, must physically attend at least 1 meeting between electronic attendant meetings, and that there does have to be, in order for electronic participation to occur, at least 50% of the membership must be physically present in the room where the meeting is being held.
And Tom, I do just want to make a quick clarification to that. It does specify that you may attend 2 consecutive meetings by electronic communication.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed.
But that there must be 1 meeting attended in person in between pairs of electronic attendance.
I guess, yeah,
But-
I didn't say that quite correctly, did I?
Right, but the point is still there, that it's not the same terms that it is now, where it's unlimited consecutive
Right.
electronic attendance.
And then, and the flip side of it is that, if you choose not to adopt this policy, and where we are locally with the health order being rescinded and stuff, that basically just means that your meetings go back to what they were pandemic. They're in-person meetings. You have to be present and in attendance to vote, to participate. And then also along those lines, and Joe's aware of some of this because we've emailed, we're working on figuring out, meeting location and how that would work to do a hybrid in-person and electronic meeting. Still don't have an answer from the city on the McCloskey room, but the city or the county, the county is at the very least going to have the Nat U Hill room in the courthouse set up to do hybrid meetings. And as of right now, there does not appear to be a conflict with the CAC schedule. So if you do want to do the hybrid meetings and the city can't do them in the McCloskey room, we'll just advertise an amended notice for the remainder of your meetings for the year and move them to the Nat U Hill room.
So as far as making sure that we don't have more than 50% attending electronically, would we then kind of, would you poll everyone ahead of the meeting to find out how they're going to be attending?
That's kind of up to you guys.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what the board has tasked me with doing with board meetings, is polling the board members to make sure that a majority of them will be in the room. But yeah, how you choose to manage that is be up to your officers.
And to be sure, when it's 50% of members, is that of the total like membership or of quorum?
Membership.
Okay.
So right now you would need 5 in the room.
And everyone counts toward quorum, whether they're in person or electronically. That's my assumption, right? Anyone who's attending.
So Lily asked a question for some clarification on why we're discussing all of this. And as a result of what everybody has gone through in government, holding meetings for the last year with COVID, the state legislature passed and the governor signed a law that made some changes to the Indiana open door law that governs the public meeting of government bodies, governing bodies, and the way that the open door law defines a governing body and official action. The CAC is subject to these new requirements.
And also, I want to point out as well that these aren't actually restrictions. So if you read through the Exhibit A to the resolution that was provided, everything is struck out that required everyone to be in person all the time, always. So this is the current conditions are of just being able to meet virtually all the time continuously is strictly because of the emergency executive order. And once that goes away, it will be to the same conditions. It would be to the same conditions that were present before the pandemic, which were everyone being physically present all the time only. So this is actually allowing people to have voting authority from electronic connections instead of requiring them to be in person.
Yeah, and they, as they tend to do, they're making it complicated, but it should hopefully, increase the people's ability to participate in meetings moving forward. And
yeah, can you hear me, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay, I see. I'm green. Sorry, I'm in the car. I was just wondering. So it sounds like the reason that it can't be as it is, where anyone can be remote, is because the state has said if you are to adopt this new amendment, you still have to have X, Y, Z. I guess that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and as Joe
right.
Joe said, the governor's emergency order does supersede this law, but this law has been passed and it was effective immediately upon passing. So once the emergency order goes away, this law becomes effective. The governor's emergency order is scheduled to expire on May the 31st. I have heard absolutely nothing to indicate that he's going to let it expire or that he's going to extend it. He could yet extend it again, which would then put off, there's all the requirements of the new open door law. But if the CAC wishes to continue to allow electronic participation in meetings moving forward, some sort of policy like this needs to be adopted before that can happen.
I guess that makes sense. We've been operating this way for so long now electronically that it feels like there was never a time that we didn't do this, but there really was a time when we never did this. So.
I prefer the time when we didn't do this.
I also want to note an important one. I'm sorry, Tom, I don't remember if you included this one on the list, but being present for approving a budget also requires, approving a budget also requires being present. So even with the amended law, it doesn't permit for electronic participation for budget decisions, which we would actually be doing at our subsequent meeting.
Yeah, and that's what I'm still not clear on how that applies to the CAC, because you're not actually adopting or approving the budget. You're just making a recommendation to our board.
Okay.
So I'm still trying to get some clarification on that, but you're right. That may very well apply, to your June, July meetings every year, where you make that vote on our budget to take to our board to say that you agree or that you think some changes should be made.
Okay.
Point of clarification. Oh, I can't. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, new headphones. So to understand fully, the upper limit for electronic presentation for electronic participation for an individual is basically every other meeting. Correct?
Yeah,
Attend 2 in electronically, then 1 in person, right?
So it's no more than 50% of the yearly meetings. So on average, yes, that would be in every other, but it does permit single consecutive electronic participation, but no more than 2 in a row.
No
Yeah,
more than 2 in a row. Got it.
2 electronic ones in a row. And the way that it reads, then you can't skip that third meeting altogether and then do electronic. Your next, after you do 2 consecutive electronic ones, the next meeting you attend must be in person, whether that's the following meeting or 3 meetings down the road.
And so for the total maximum, the 50% that you can attend electronically during the year, that's of the advertised meetings. That's not of the meetings that you attend, right? So,
Say it,
you know, I
say it
mean,
again.
say that you're only going to attend 2 meetings in the year for some reason. You're only going to go to 2 of the 12 meetings or however many we end up having. The 50% doesn't apply to that. I mean, you could attend both electronically if those are
Right,
only,
yeah. You have,
it's of all that are advertised.
for 2021, the CAC has 12 meetings scheduled. So you could attend a maximum of 6 of those electronically. If you only attend 2 meetings and they're both electronic, then you're still within that restriction or that requirement.
And what about as we add in special meetings, like the joint meetings or?
Well, that would just add a meeting in there, and you just have to look at your attendance, attendance sequence record, and as to whether or not, if you attend, if you attend the May and June CAC meetings electronically, and then at the beginning of the July, there's a joint board CAC meeting on the budget, you'd have to be at that one in person in order to attend and participate.
Thanks.
And this only is in reference to people who are on committees, correct? Not to the public who might participate?
So this is for voting abilities,
Yeah.
essentially. So again, and this is all specified in the resolution itself, but it's basically to authorize voting abilities in the meeting, because with the previous version, without adopting this change, you still can attend a meeting electronically to listen, but you would be like a member of the public, where you wouldn't have voting authority and you wouldn't count towards quorum.
But part of the requirement also is that if you allow members to participate electronically, you have to allow the public to participate. So they have to be able to electronically do public comment. And then one other thing I did forget to mention, that looking at the screen, I'm reminded, in order to participate, in order to vote on something, you have to be seen and heard. So Paul could not vote right now. You can, because this policy is not in place, but under this policy, the way we're set up right now, where I can't see Paul, Morning, and Lily, they can't vote because they can't be seen and heard.
So to follow up on Rondi's remark, which I think is pretty much the one thing that's not really addressed by the resolution itself, but I think would need to still be incorporated into policy by the CAC, is defining how we set the number of attendees, or anticipating who can be remote if there's not enough members present physically. So,
Rondi, do you recall, did the CAC ever establish bylaws? I know it was talked about, and I just can't remember if you guys ever actually voted on anything.
No, we didn't. I did share it with Joe in case he wanted to grab the torch, but we had talked about it for a while, and then there just didn't seem to be interest in it. So we have that one that is labeled as a draft that we never knew if it was actually ever approved. In my time, they weren't approved, but
we had bylaws a long time ago.
Yes, we don't know when they were approved. And I did reach out to Steve Akers, and he didn't have record.
Because I've got a whole folder on that. We have bylaws, and then we made some changes and we talked about it and
Well, I mean, I guess I asked because some of the stuff that you and Joe have talked about regarding coordinating the meetings under this policy could be addressed in bylaws.
Mhm.
Yeah, and to follow up on your remark, Rondi, I did anticipate to address the approval of bylaws following the management plan activities, since that's been predominantly the focus of meeting content. Once that
Definitely.
was completed, that'd be an appropriate time to make sure we adopt bylaws, which I guess for the sake of this conversation are, policy for determining how absentee participation or electronic participation is permitted could just be a convention that we accept, but will incorporate into our bylaws once we define and adopt bylaws.
I guess one concern that I have is that if we adopt this, I would assume that, if I said I would like to attend electronically, it's probably because if I couldn't do that, I wouldn't be able to come. And so I'm just wondering, if this will just end up making a mess of our quorum that we've been actually doing the best. I've been on the CAC for a long time, and this has been the highest amount of meetings in a row with full quorum. So, I guess that's my thought is, if you say, well, we have reached our max of electronics, so you have to come in person, how many of those people would versus just saying, okay, then I won't attend?
Well, I mean, the flip side of that is that if you don't adopt this policy, when the emergency order is rescinded or expires, then you have to be in person, period. There's no other choice.
Right, as I mentioned before, this is essentially permitting member voting participation electronically with conditions that wouldn't otherwise be possible if we don't accept it. So again,
And I think Lily, what you expressed there, I think a lot of bodies have experienced that. There's increased participation doing virtual meetings because people can attend from wherever they are and not have to drop everything and drive downtown or whatever. And I think there's bodies across the state that have experienced that, and that was part of the push that led to these changes being made. And and unfortunately, they're just not making a blanket, just let it continue. They're putting caveats into how it has to continue, and that's what we're stuck trying to tackle and address to make sure we're in compliance with the new law.
Yeah, I can see that being true. Thanks.
So basically, every time we have a meeting from now on, if we adopt this, we need to have 5 people in person at all times. That's correct?
and that's to have a quorum, essentially, in order to have enough
You have to have a
voting
quorum.
members.
Yeah, you got to have a quorum to take action, and you got to have half of them in the room if it's if there's no emergency order in place and we're doing in-person meetings.
But 5 people in person, and then anyone else that's not in person can join electronically, and it's okay for them to vote.
Mhm.
Okay.
If provided they can be seen and heard.
Okay.
And they haven't attended 2 previous meetings electronically. I mean, they have to be within their permitted electronic attendance conditions as well.
I guess it's a shame that those who could attend in person wouldn't be 50% of quorum, but that it's 50% of the members, that makes it harder.
Right.
Again, we were used to attending in person in the past, so we can get back.
And I would not be surprised to if the emergency order goes away at the end of this month, as it's right now scheduled to do, and then we have 6-7 months of people dealing with this. I would not be surprised to see the legislature come back the first session of next year and make some tweaks based on challenges, complaints, difficulties people experienced with the requirements that are in place now. But that's what we have now, and that's what we have to try to work with.
So in terms of planning attendance to determine if electronic attendance is possible, do we need to take measures?
Well, that probably is a meeting by meeting basis, depending on what's on the agenda and what issues or items might need acted upon at a given meeting.
Right. I think, as Lily pointed out, I don't know that setting up a sort of priority list of when you can and cannot attend electronically will make a difference. Like if someone's going to attend electronically or not at all, then it doesn't matter how many people are attending in person. They essentially will vote if they can, or just not vote if they're not able to be there in person. I mean, it's at least my take from sort of the general sentiments from the discussion. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but.
I mean, there's nothing to prohibit you guys from all, getting to, or via email or phone calls or whatever. You could set up a rotation. You could say, hey, the next meeting is the June meeting. These 5 will be the people in person. The rest of you be there virtually if you can. Here's the 5 that have to be in person at July. You could set that schedule up. There's nothing to prevent you from doing that. And you could take polls of people who's available when, and just make sure that you have 5 committed to being in person for each scheduled meeting. And then when we do the special sessions or the joint meetings, we'll have to tackle those as they arise.
I can say that I, for one, will majoritarily be present in person. I mean, I suppose it seems that the intent of this legislation is to allow for special situations where you may not be able to occasionally, so you're allowed to still participate electronically, more so than just saying you can freely do whatever you like between the two. And I can speak for myself in saying that I prefer in-person attendance and would anticipate, unless extraneous conditions prevent me from doing so, in person all the time. I don't know if that's necessarily true for everyone. If everyone were of that stance, I don't know that we would necessarily need to create a certain way to determine who can be electronic when. But if the overall sentiment is that you'd like to be able to just freely choose if you want to be electronic or not, then as Tom said, we would need to make sure that we're allocating enough people, enough of the time to be present to actually make a quorum out of the 50% of members being present in order to allow electronic participation as well.
I guess if we just kind of were to go forward with the idea that we're going to attend in person, if at all possible, really only attending electronically if we absolutely have to, then we could get through a couple months and see how that goes. Just give it a try to see how it goes doing it that way. And then if it isn't working, then we can come up with a schedule like Tom suggested. That's just a thought.
I agree with both of you, Randy and Joe. I think that's as needed basis, sort of not emergency, but very rarely if we need to make that accommodation.
I'm the oddball that would do this every time if I could. My schedule is just packed. I don't even know how consistently and reliably I'll be able to make this because of my other meeting obligations that are facing the same constraints.
Now, there are some exceptions in the law regarding military service, illness, death in the family, and things like that, that some we hope nobody has to encounter, but if we ever were to encounter any of those, you go back to the law and just figure it out. So, but they will let you participate from your hospital bed. So,
oh, good.
Well, what if you're just sick at home? You have the flu or a really bad cold or something.
that is, and it just says illness or other medical condition.
Right.
So nothing about a doctor's note or anything like that. But that doesn't necessarily, that doesn't exempt the 50% requirement, but that exemption can play into the consecutive meeting issue.
So if there aren't any additional thoughts, I think I can summarize in saying that the motion, as Andrew stated it, would just simply be voted as is with no provisions for managing in-person versus electronic attendance anticipation. Well,
I'm sorry, I take that back. Those exceptions do also exist for the 50% requirement. That's on page 6 of the packet at the top.
Well, that's a relief.
Are you still working?
Paul, that doesn't mean you get to play hooky so you can phone in.
Oh, come on now. You know how much I like playing hooky.
well, if there are no further remarks, I will ask the question. Let's see. Do we adopt the Resolution 2021-01 on electronic attendance?
I would say that the being seen and heard requirement does not apply, so everybody should be able to vote. But for the board, we have done all votes via a roll call, not just a voice vote, so that very, very obvious if there's yays and nays. So.
And I believe that's also specified in the
Yeah, and the
resolution.
new law, they do have to be voice votes. That was not stipulated in the emergency order stuff, but that's
Right.
just kind of where all the governing bodies have gone on that. So
Right.
That makes sense.
You want me to call it, Joe?
Yes, if the vice chair would please take
I'm just going to go in the order I see on my screen. I'll start with myself. Aye. Andrew?
Aye.
Nelson? Sorry, you're muted, Nelson.
Aye.
Thanks. Joe?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Lily?
Yes.
Morning?
Yes.
And Paul?
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous. Motion carries.
All right. The motion carries, and I will provide the updated copy of the resolution with the proposed corrections once I receive them from Tom. Thank you, Tom.
get that out in the morning.
Excellent. That does bring us to within 1 minute of our scheduled end time. Is there any opposition to extending the meeting for 5 minutes to address the last item listed in the agenda, which is, forgive me, 5-year plan outstanding items. Oh, actually, there's 2 items in the agenda. The other is budget preparation, which I don't think requires discussion for the sake of this meeting, but I would like to cover the last agenda item if there's no opposition. All right, seeing none, we extend 5 minutes. We move on to the last item on the agenda. I will just note that on the budget preparation, there is budgetary information distributed in the packet that can be referenced in anticipation for discussing our budget and voting on it for the next meeting. Tom, I do want to verify with you that there doesn't need to be any, for open door laws, 2 meeting policy in terms of adopting budgets where it has to be announced at one meeting and then voted on in a subsequent meeting.
Not for yours, because yours
Okay.
is just a sub part of our budget.
Okay, good. That's what I had gathered. All right, thank you. So that does bring us then just to the completion of the outstanding items for the 5-year management plan. What I was hoping to achieve during this meeting is setting a plan for going forward, since we're near the home stretch, but there's still work that needs to be done and needs to be done prior to our next monthly meeting so that we can use that meeting to hopefully, if we have a quorum, make final approval for our recommendations to the board so that they can have at their subsequent meeting a CAC approved draft of the 5-year management plan proposal. So I want to open the floor to see if there are any thoughts or suggestions for next steps for completing our recommendations within that timeline.
How many, we have to have less than a quorum to have a working session. But it doesn't have to be open to the public. We don't have to have public meeting laws and whatnot.
Correct.
I would propose we just have a working session scheduled between now and then, or maybe 2. I don't know.
I agree that a group working session would be helpful. I think 2 would probably be better, or maybe even necessary in terms of the amount of work that I see as remaining.
I just would caution you that, if you have a quorum present, then you're in violation of the open door law. And if the way I'm hearing what you're saying right now, you're walking a thin line on a serial meeting situation, which I don't know that there's any issues because you're not adopting a budget. You're not covertly taking any action that's going to negatively impact the public, but under the letter of the law, holding consecutive meetings minus a quorum where you have one half here and one half there could constitute serial meetings under the statute.
Could you define serial meetings, Tom? I'm afraid I'm unfamiliar.
Serial meetings is when a governing body to circumvent the open door law meets in less than a quorum in a series of meetings, so that the chair or the vice chair meets with everybody but never in a quorum, and they reach a decision on something.
But what about if it's a subcommittee?
Well, that's what the subcommittee meetings that you guys did on all the various topics of the plan, you divided up into committees that were less than a quorum, and they had tasks, and but then brought everything back to the group at a public session, for any decision or action. And that's I'm not saying that what you guys just said would break the law. It just was walking a thin line there.
Yeah, I was only going to suggest if we had to, we could just make another subcommittee to wrap this up.
Yeah, and I'm also not opposed to that idea. I think that might be a good approach as well, since I presume the number of members involved wouldn't exceed quorum anyway. And I was also just interested in knowing which members would be interested in participating, and then I guess in what number of meetings they would be willing to participate, so that we can schedule those with the members, with the workforce that we have assembled.
I'd be willing to attend about 2.
Can you remind me when we need to have this recommendation ready? By July, is that right? Was that
So
the goal?
yes, July is when the board will be making a decision on it, but their meeting in July is before ours. So June is...
and that was the goal, and nobody has really talked about deviating from that at this point. But given where we are and how well I think that we've progressed, I'd hate to see us rush things through at the end. And I don't know what the word is, but squash or forget something that we've worked hard to get and to try to address in the plan because we're rushing to get it through. And on top of that, we also have the budget that's going to be going through in the same timeline. Maybe we want to see if the board want to push the plan off till their August meeting, which would give the CAC June and July meetings, especially since I don't have a working draft to give to you yet, that you have your June and your July meetings to play with that working draft, finish up your unfinished business, and see how that fits into that draft. And then, the board can look at approving something in July. It would be totally up to them, but I'm kind of leaning toward seeing if the board would want to give us one more month on the plan so that we can not waste the good work that's been done and have a good solid plan for them to approve and adopt.
If we could get an extra month, then I'd be up for a couple more meetings. I just don't know if I could get 2 in before our June meeting, because I'll be out of town for a little bit. So,
Same.
but I'm interested.
All right, so let's see. I'm gonna put Randy down for 1 meeting. And Ryan, if I heard correctly, you would also be available for 1 meeting? Okay. Are there any other members who are able to participate?
I
Oh,
would
yes.
participate in 1 or maybe 2. This is morning.
Thank you, Maureen.
Yes, I, Nelson Schaefer, can attend, probably depending on timing.
I will participate if I can, but I don't know at the moment.
Yeah, I'll participate if I can.
We'll just have to be careful, of course, that we.
Now you got your quorum.
Right, exactly. Okay, well, what I can do then is, knowing the members who are interested in participating, I can set up a scheduling poll to see what member availability is. And from that, we will be able to see, I'm sure that with everybody who responded, and then the amount of times that will actually align will make for small enough groups and small enough numbers. That we can arrange a couple of meetings, I think, over the course of the next month. And Tom, to follow up on your remark, I think that the interest in having this complete over the next month, I don't think there's more work than can be done over that period. And that will still give the CAC one more group review opportunity, after having worked in subgroups to review what was collectively achieved or composed. So that there would still then again be another month following, or less than a month, a little less than a month following that meeting, so that if there were any modifications that came up from the CAC's conclusive meeting, those modifications could still be made in that time. So I would.
Yeah, it's up to the board. I just, as we get into the next month or so, the budget becomes a priority for staff.
Okay.
And I don't want to dilute either process
Understood.
by trying to do them simultaneously.
Point taken. All right. Well, thank you to everyone. Oh, yes, please, Andrew.
Do we need to vote on a subcommittee to form a subcommittee? Or is this going to be a working group, like an informal thing?
I am of the mindset that it can be an informal working group, since we don't even know who will be attending when yet. Are there any other thoughts?
I was just concerned with Tom's comment on the serial meetings.
Well, if you're below a quorum and it's kind of an ad hoc subcommittee to address unfinished business, I think that you'll be okay.
Okay.
Just, if you need, just let me know if you're going to need somebody to coordinate a Zoom meeting or something for you.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. That does take us a bit over our extended time. I apologize for that delay. I see there are no members of the public present, so we can forego public comment and we can save the good of the order for a subsequent meeting. So I would just like to make the reminder that our next regular meeting will be Thursday, June 20th at 5:15 via Zoom. And if there is no objection, this meeting will be adjourned.
One more thing real fast. I just want to
Please.
thank Brian and Andrea for the compost and let everybody know that they've got this awesome treadmill device you put in the back of your pickup truck and turn a crank and your whole yard of compost just rolls out of the truck on its own.
That sounds pretty nice.
Sorry, Joe, what date did you say? Did you say the 20th?
You know what? I did. Let's
Okay, it's
see.
the 17th, I believe.
Yep. I stand corrected. Thank you very much.
No problem.
All right, so our next meeting will be Thursday, June 17th at 5:15 via Zoom. Actually, I'm not certain it will be via Zoom. I take that back. It will be Thursday, June 17th at 5:15. And
Yeah, either Zoom, the McCloskey room, or the Nat U Hill room, and
Right.
we'll get that figured out as soon as we can. I will also let you guys know, I am out of town that week, but should be able to Zoom in and be there for part of it electronically, assuming that's all established and set up.
Where are you right now? I see this beautiful picture of a lake.
Well, that's 3 years ago in Florida.
Oh. Just
Looking
curious.
at a Dodge Barracuda, right? Or a Plymouth Barracuda, right?
That's the tuna. The Barracuda picture wasn't as good as that one.
And I do want to note before we part that I will specify in the meeting announcement which room we will be meeting in, since it will be decided between now and then.
Yeah,
So everyone will know
I will
where to
let
go.
you know as soon as I can confirm anything.
All right.
And
Thank
of course,
you, Tom.
if the emergency order is extended, then we can stay virtual.
Right. Yep. And I will address that in the notification email. Are there any further items before we adjourn? All right, then seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and have a really
Thank
good night.
you.
Thank
Yes.
you.